You ready? Come on, you lot. Go on then.
Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The imps are here to stay.
Morning all. Shorter intro again today, many reasons. Unwilling dog for the walk, almost certainly. Bit windy as well. And yeah, I just didn't want to have to wait any longer to come online and say hello. So it's a blustery, breezy morning up here in the Lincolnshire Wolds, as you can probably tell. If it gets too windy, if you can't hear me properly or anything like that, please do let me know. So it's just a quick debrief really from yesterday. It's from last night's game against Barnsley. Obviously, I wrote my article straight after the game. And sometimes when I write after the game, you can, dare I say, be consumed by emotion a little bit. So you can, it's like anything, isn't it? If something happens to you in the immediate aftermath, your gut reaction is the one that you kind of go with and you pin your colours to. And then as time passes, you kind of think about it a little bit more and process it and come out with maybe a more balanced view. And I'd liken that to being involved maybe in a bump in your car. Like if somebody drives into you in your car, your first thought is, oh, bastards, and out you get and you're all angry. And then maybe over the course of a couple of days, you can see why they may have managed to do it, or maybe a little bit where you might have been in the wrong. So it's easy then to process what's happened. And so last night I wrote about the Barnsley game straight afterwards. I was hugely complimentary. Let's try again, shall we? So straight after the Barnsley game last night, I was hugely passionate, massively complimentary about how we'd played. I felt that it was a good sign of things sort of kind of going forward. And I've gone to bed and I've had to think about it and I've processed the information and I've woke up with exactly the same conclusion, if I'm honest. When you look at the balance of the game and you think a little bit more about how the game kind of progressed, I think the first 10 minutes up until Jack Diamond's chance, I kind of thought, this isn't what we want. We were letting them have all of the ball. We were wasteful the occasions we did get it, and it just, I liked us to keep it tight in the first 10 minutes. We were doing that, but it was that kind of tightness against Charlton where, we were operating really well in the defensive third, but the other 2/3 of the pitch didn't particularly exist. And then Jack Diamond hit the post, and kind of as a supporter, that's where you go, of course, yeah, that's what we do. We can hit on the break. And I think Barnsley quickly ran out of ideas. And do you know what, if I'm being entirely honest, we keep talking about this run where we've played 6 former Premier League teams and we've beaten Derby and we've beaten Ipswich, we've drawn with Charlton and we've drawn with Sheffield Wednesday, and we should have got something against Bolton. And we talk about this run. And when you tag Barnsley into that, I think they're the weakest of all of the teams, all of those 6 teams that we've played, because actually outside of their initial kind of approach, their initial let's get up and at them, and I felt that they didn't really offer very much. And I've seen some praise of James Norwood. Look, James Norwood's been a good professional who has bothered Lincoln for many years now. 8-9 years he's been scoring against Lincoln and kind of causing us problems. But actually, last night was one of the weakest performances I've seen him put in. Him and Devante Cole, whilst solid enough League One players, didn't think it particularly worked. And if I was a Barnsley fan, I wouldn't be worried. There's no kind of lower bottom half finish in there, but I would be utterly amazed if Barnsley were to finish in the top 6. But they still were at home. It's still a big stadium. It's still one of those occasions where, as a Lincoln City fan, you will likely remember it in 10, 15 years' time. And I can't see them doing a Bradford when we first kind of started playing Bradford again. And it was a big occasion. And now Bradford have kind of just morphed into this pretty big kind of lower league team. I don't think that'll happen with Barnsley. I think that they will remain as a decent League One side, but nothing more at the moment. So it's not casting aspersions on the quality of the opposition entirely, but I think of all of the games, it was still one where you would hope that we could probably go and get a point. And I think when we did our preview, myself and Chris on the podcast the other week, we felt that this was the sort of game where you could get a point. Michael Duff, lower league manager at the moment, done very well with Cheltenham, but making that step up from being tight and resolute to having to go and break teams down in front of a big crowd isn't always easy. And I think we saw that with Barnsley. And I think once they not ran out of ideas, but once their plan A didn't work on about 20 minutes, there wasn't a plan B. And with respect to Ipswich, they did switch things around. They started kind of moving players across the pitch. They started trying to overload particular areas, which I think is why TJ looked a little bit like he struggled against Ipswich at times, because they were doubling up on him. And Mandrew, I think, was playing ahead of him. He wasn't always the best kind of support player there. So, Ipswich was certainly more versatile. I think Barnsley have got some work to do. However, they're still a decent side, and I think we still had to stick to our guns well. At one point, 75% possessions, 25, I think. And then by the end of the first half, things had changed, and we'd kind of gone to not 50-50, but like more close to 60-40, which shows how we imposed ourselves on the game and we grew in confidence. And I think with a young squad and a young starting 11 particularly, sometimes it's going to take a little bit for us to grow into games. Sometimes we are not going to be overawed, because I think that we've proven that that's not the case. We've got some really good young players at the moment. But we just need to feel our way in. We just need to let them have the first exchanges. We need to let them tire themselves out. We need to let them try and get at our fullbacks and realise that they can't do it. And when that happens, then we can start trying to express ourselves. In some games, it's been difficult. Charlton, it was difficult. I'm not sure it was against Ipswich. We create few chances. We create fewer chances than our opposition, but we create decent chances when we're playing the bigger clubs, because they're pressing, they're coming at us. And then, the crossfield ball, the ball from Diamond to Mandrew was utterly phenomenal. And there's been a couple of instances. There was Rushworth's ball out to Diamond when we hit the post as well. We've got that in our locker, and it's not long ball football. We're not looking for a big man land it on their head and pick up the bits and pieces. It's proper counter-attacking football. And for a short spell against Wednesday, and for a short spell last night, there was that basketball element, back and from, where we're trying to do the attacking so much that we're actually not leaving gaps, but the game is quick. And I think if we get drawn into that back and forth basketball game, that's when we could do ourselves damage. But we didn't last night. We then got possession. We went back to the goalkeeper, and I know that there's a demographic of fan who absolutely despise that. When we get the ball in the attacking third and within 3 passes, we're back at the goalkeeper. But that's what we have to do to frustrate some of these bigger teams, and it's why we're keeping clean sheets, or it's why we're not having lots of chances against us, because we're trying just to manage the game a little bit, the pace of the game. It's not great spectator sport when you're losing 1-0 or when you're drawing 0-0. Hence, and respect to Mark, who commented the other day, at least he admitted, he put his hands up and said, I'm moved as going back to the goalkeeper after 30 odd minutes of Saturday's game. So fair play to him for kind of owning that. When you're 1-0 up, or when you're kind of getting a result away from home, like at Ipswich or Barnsley, it's a different matter altogether. And I think then, you appreciate a spell of possession. You appreciate how solid and how kind of safe we're playing things. I think it's interesting. It's really windy here, so if the wind gets too much on the phone, let me know again. Respect to Joe Walsh, I thought Joe Walsh settled in as if he had never been out, if only that were the case. But when we're playing 3 at the back, actually, at the minute we've got quite a few centre backs, and people say maybe Rowan and TJ are also centre backs as well. So we've got good cover in there. But to be able to swap Walsh and Jackson and get 90 minutes out of both of them on each Saturday, with Poole and O'Connor kind of gravitating around them, is really good. And do you know what? I doubt that there is a team in League One this season who has a better collection of centre backs overall, or more centre-back options overall. And when you consider last season how many goals we conceded, stupid goals as well, sometimes through what looked like, or what I would refer to as lily-livered defending, turning our back on the ball, not going for a challenge, not putting a body on the line. It did happen, Accrington and Hartlepool, and it was the Cambridge goal we conceded, there was the Doncaster, it was a penalty, but to be fair, it wasn't great defending. We were relying on midfielders tracking runners rather than centre-halves stopping them. It's largely the same personnel. We only added Powdy O'Connor in the summer. He's the only defender, and actually they look completely different. Now, whether that's work on the training ground, whether that's the 3 at the back, because I think at spells earlier this season, certainly Bristol Rovers away and Peterborough as well, we looked like we conceded every time the ball came forward. So we certainly remedied that very, very well. And with the greatest respect, there wasn't a single moment last night where I thought, we're on the ropes here. And it sounds stupid, but the Ipswich game was the same. 33 shots, 5 on target. There wasn't a single moment where I thought, oh God, here we go. Yeah, we're gonna lose it now. We always look like we're gonna get a block. You always think somebody's gonna get a foot on the ball. And there was a moment late on, it's been talked about plenty already, and if the game was only kind of 12 hours ago or whatever, TJ's block, where last season that shot goes through 3 people and then troubles the goalkeeper. Yesterday didn't get past the first defender. I don't know why all of a sudden that's happened. I don't know why all of a sudden we seem to be able to seem to want to put our body on the line. I don't think it's desire. I don't think that you can say, well, we didn't want it enough 6 weeks ago or 3 months ago or anything like that, because of course we did. Footballers want to win football games. And people might say, oh, we look like we want to win them now. But when you saw the hurt in some of the players' faces after we'd lost games last season, I think they wanted to win those games as well. It's just something. Is it belief? Is it that there's a group of young players now who have got belief in themselves? I certainly think when you talk about, I mean, there's 2 I'll mention, and one's not even a centre half or a defender, but Sean Rowan and Max Sanders are absolute classic examples, and we can go on about it all day long about those 2 players. They were in our squad last season, and they started between them what? I mean, Rowan started 1. I don't know how many Sanders started. He only ever got run out when no one else was available, and I don't know if it was him. Was it on Crew last game of the season where we'd barely got a substitutes bench and we still kept Max Sanders on it, and you think, oh my Lord, what on earth are we doing here? Look at him now. I mean, Sanders and Matty Virtue took a little while to settle in, but him and Sanders, their work rate's phenomenal. And the fact that we've been willing not to keep favourites in the side, there's been no favouritism whatsoever. Jamie Robson started at left back. Sean Rowan got his chance, took it, and now Jamie can't get in. Lass Sorensen started in the holding midfield role, earned rave reviews, by the way. We've switched things around a little bit, and now Lass is struggling to get in the side, not through any fault of his own. Last season, whenever we had to make changes, it was usually because this player or that player was either injured or had done something wrong, and so we were bringing a player in to cover. Rather than now, we're bringing players in who have done stuff off their own back, who have earned their right, and they're keeping their position. And maybe that's part of why we look a more committed bunch, because people are playing to keep their position. They're playing so, and when they get the opportunity, they're playing so hard that they're earning the right to keep their position as well. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting carried away. 8 points from 4 games is an excellent return. If you then go further back and kind of you look at the Bristol Rovers and the Derby win, I mean, over a 10-game form table, we've got to be right up there. I haven't seen it, which is unusual for me, but we've got to be right up there. I think it's interesting as well when you think about Ted Bishop out injured, still to come back in. Where does he play in last night's team? The honesty shout is right now, probably Ted Bishop is the player that drops out when we go to 5 or 3 at the back or 5 at the back. You're going to play him at right wing back, given I think how TJ's playing. I mean, he did struggle for the first 5, 6, 7 games. I think he's had some unfair stick over the last 3 or 4 games, almost certainly. I didn't think he was bad at all on Saturday, and I thought the fact that people were calling him out saying he was surprised me. And Sean Rowan, I mean, I've just mentioned Max Sanders and talked about him. Sean Rowan couldn't get a game last year. He was taken off against Bowers and Pitsy. That was it. That was how he played, and he's one game. And you kind of thought, where has this player gone? Well, he hasn't. He hasn't gone anywhere, because the Sean Rowan we're seeing now is not a great amount different to the Sean Rowan that we saw at the beginning 2 seasons ago when he burst onto the scene. And yes, Micah Richards, he did burst onto the scene. I know that's a bit of a joke with Micah. So Sean Rowan burst onto the scene, then he disappeared. He had some problems with injuries, but my God, he looks good now. And do you know what? There's some actions that he takes and some things he does where you look at his number and think, wow, it's an 18-year-old kid. And he takes absolutely no shit at all. And there was a moment yesterday right down on the defensive flank where he'd either made a bad pass or missed a tackle or something like that. And within seconds, he was back, he was in front, he was blocking, he was tackling, and he's come away with the ball. And I remember they were looking, thinking that the winger could get across in there. And within a second, Sean Rowan's emerging with the ball up the pitch. I mean, the boy is talented. He's obviously happy. He's focused. I mean, it is tough on Jamie Robson. It really is. But I think Sean Rowan at the moment is our first choice left back. And if he keeps playing how he's playing now, we might just have to fend off some interest from him in January, genuinely. So we got a goal, really well taken. Quick word on Danny Mandrew, however you want to pronounce it. I don't care, as long as you have to keep pronouncing it in context of him scoring goals. 3-3 now. All confident finishes, decent finishes. Dare I say, simple finishes. And let me explain. I don't mean easy goals. I mean a basic kind of shot. He's not trying to be fancy. He's not trying to put his foot through it. He's not trying to go top corner. He's not trying to kind of be, he's just doing the basics. Ball, look at a goal. Where's the easiest place to put it? Away from the goalkeeper, low, hard to save. And that's certainly, his goal on Saturday. People, the Chef Wednesday fans are saying the keeper should do better. He's gone across the keeper away. I'm doing this, by the way. Across the keeper, away from the keeper. Last night, good, confident finish. I mean, a great ball, but he shows some real talent and he shows good runs. And I'm really excited to see Lewis Monsma's 50-yard balls landing at the feet of Danny Mandrew when Monsma comes back. And so, yeah, we've got a big selection problem on when he comes back. Charlie, let's go back because it's muddy there, boy. We've got a big selection problem when Monsma comes back, because who do you play right centre back? Regan Poole, Adam Jackson can play there. Lewis Monsma. We've just got such, so exciting. Second half, it felt unremarkable because it felt to me like we'd got a goal. We came out and tried immediately to get another. We started the second half very well on Saturday. We started the second half very well this week, or last night rather. Didn't get the goal that perhaps we deserved, but I thought we always looked in it. I thought the second half was far more balanced than the first. We were a little wasteful at times in possession. We'd come away with the ball and enter the kind of middle third, and then a pass would break down or a run would break down. But again, we're not 20 games into the Mark Kennedy era yet. 4 defeats, by the way. Not bad, is it? But we're not 20 games into the Mark Kennedy era yet. Danny Mandrew started, 5 games for us. Jack Diamond only arrived at the beginning of September. We're not even out of October yet. Remember that. So, August was a tough month for us, but we had no Mandrew, we had no Diamond. Ben House wasn't playing up top. Sean Rowan hadn't got himself into the side. We hadn't trialled the 3 at the back. Do you know what I mean? August seems so far away. Seems like such a long time ago now. And I remember chatting to Liam Scully before the game against Exeter City. And he was saying, get through this, Peterborough, Forest Green, get to the beginning of September and we'll be in better shape. And I remember having a conversation a little bit later on a podcast or one of the other bits of media and saying, we'll need to be. And not disbelieving what the club were telling me, but just thinking, it's easy to be a little bit confident, but this is a tough division still. And, we didn't look... We looked like we were probably going to be a lower bottom half team, and I would have taken that. But this last month has sparked hope that actually maybe we are a mid-table team, and by mid-table I mean top of the bottom half, bottom of the top half. If we could sit somewhere in there, I mean it would be dreamland for where we were last season and the changes and the upheaval that we've gone through, and the budgeting difference and how the League One just keeps getting better and better and better. In terms of the teams, by the way, not in terms of their actual quality, but I'll come to that in a second. So there's lots to be positive about, and Saturday's a really big test, and in many respects, Saturday is a tougher test than the last 2 games, and I think that's interesting. If you consider the last 2 matches, we've gone into them and we know what we're going to do. We saw the blueprint at Ipswich. We're going to be tough. We're going to try and stifle the good players. We're going to let them have possession where it's not going to hurt us. And we're going to try and make sure they don't have any possession where it might hurt us. So when you've seen us do that against Ipswich, you know what's coming against Chef Wednesday. And there was lots of people beforehand saying a draw. I said a draw on the Chef Weds podcast. Chris said a draw for the Barnsley podcast, because they're the sorts of games you could see us taking something from. We've done well to come out with 4 points, by the way. I'll kind of say that, but Port Vale is a game where 95% of Lincoln City fans will likely say we should win this. That's the test. That's why, in terms of knowing where we are, it's probably a bigger game than the last two that we've done. Because actually, if this Lincoln City team can go to a team that we are, when I say supposed to be, I don't want to sound disrespectful. I don't want to make that sound like I'm arrogant that, Port Vale, one of the teams we should be beating. But with respect, they are the sort of team that you look at and think, they are the sort of team that you have to be beating if you have aspirations to finish in the top half of the League One table. And there will be a lot of people saying the same thing about Lincoln City. Port Vale look at Lincoln City and think, well, we've played them in League Two not so long ago. They're a team that we have been above for many years as well, like through 2000s and stuff like that. They will think Lincoln City are the sort of team they need to be beaten if they're to finish at the top half of the bottom half of the table, if you know what I mean. So we are both each other's sort of team that we need to beat. But we know they've just come up. They're patchy. I think they're below us in the table, which is a really unique position for us because I don't think we've played anybody below us in the table, bar probably Bristol Rovers and Forest Green this season as yet. But it's the type of game where if we go there and actually get a win, the type of game that we should be winning without being arrogant, dare I say, then you might start to wonder where this Lincoln City team could go. Because then we'd be doing something that we didn't do last season and we didn't do the season before. Under Michael Appleton, we were able to play big teams and get decent results. We weren't able always to... It's blowing a gale up here now. I hope it's not too bad for you on the microphone. We weren't able to beat teams we should have been beating. And I think back to home games in the year that we made the playoffs. I think back to home games against Rochdale and Fleetwood and Swindon and Accrington Stanley. 4 games that we didn't win that had we won, I think would have put us into the automatic promotion frame. So an inability to beat those teams cost us. Last season, it was an inability not just to beat those teams, but to score against those teams. And you think about home games against Accrington and Doncaster and Gillingham, and in the FA Cup game against Hartlepool, teams that, considering where they then finished in the table, 3 of those were either relegated. 3 of those now playing in League Two, so 2 were relegated. 1 were a League Two team anyway. We struggled to break them down. We struggled to break Bowers and Pitsea down. We only won 1-0. So when teams came to defend, or when teams were a little more defensive minded, we struggled. And if we can crack that, if this Lincoln City team can go back to a 4 at the back, still defend relatively well, probably still be protected by the 2 holding midfielders, but have more attacking intent, we could be in a really, really good place this season. And there will be ups and downs. I'm not getting carried away. Of course, there'll be ups and downs. But I remember leaving the Fleetwood game, it was the aftermath actually, the Cambridge game, which I think was the week after. And I was worried, and I've said it before, and I don't mind saying that again. I was worried because I saw an inability to hold the lead. I didn't see a huge amount of attacking intent. Bear in mind, we hadn't seen Jack Diamond. I think he made his debut against Cambridge in the league, so we hadn't seen a lot of him. Jordan Garrick had got himself injured. We hadn't seen Danny Mandrew. We hadn't got 3 at the back, and I was concerned. I really was. But it's a different beast now, a different beast, and it's amazing what 6-7 weeks can do. It's amazing what a single month can do. I think we all looked at the calendar, and we looked at Bolton and Charlton and Sheffield Wednesday and Ipswich and Barnsley, and a lot of people were saying with that month we need points on the boards in September, and we didn't get them. We didn't play an awful lot of games. We had 2 home games cancelled against teams that actually probably you would have expected 4 points from, at least given how they've played, and 4 points between 4 additional points now would have us right on the fringes of the playoffs, somewhere that we never thought we would potentially be. So I think that also points a little bit to us respecting League One a little bit more than it deserves. And I'll come through some comments in a moment. I don't want to go on too long, but I think when you look at League One and you think, wow, there's so many good teams in there. There's, at the beginning of the season, I was saying that Peterborough, Sheffield Wednesday, Derby, Portsmouth, Ipswich, Charlton, Bolton, Barnsley, even MK Dons. And then the teams coming up, you kind of fancied Bristol Rovers, Cambridge are in a good place with Mark Bonner. I think this is one of the toughest League Ones for many years. Actually, we've seen a couple of decent teams. Sheffield Wednesday were a good side, didn't lose to it. Ipswich attacking were a very good side, probably the best side that we've played overall. Sheffield Wednesday the best to come to the bank, Ipswich the best side overall. Conceded 1 goal against those two teams. Teams that have beaten us, certainly Cambridge, no better than us. Defensive naivety. Take out their 2 goals in stupid, silly goals, disorganised football. Take those out, even with our lack of attacking intent, we're no better than us. Absolutely not. Bolton, we gave them the game. Look at the teams we failed to beat and didn't. Forest Green, Exeter, Fleetwood. Teams that you would expect, again, with the greatest respect, to take 3 points from if you finish in the bottom or top of the bottom half. For me, all 3 games we could have won. I thought Exeter, their first 20 minutes, they tore us apart, then we were the better side. Forest Green, I thought we were the better side for an hour and then conceded. And then we just folded against Fleetwood like a freshly washed duvet. It's just interesting to think that actually League One isn't as good as we think it is at the top end and isn't as bad as we think it is at the bottom end. And there's been lots of talk about 2 distinct leagues in this division. There are, in terms of budget. There are. But I'm not so sure that come the end of the season there'll be a huge gap between the team in 7th and the team in 12th or 13th. I'm not so sure that budget, whilst it might over the season manifest itself into the teams you expect to be at the top being at the top, I'm not sure they will actually be that much better than the teams who are kind of holding on to the upper half of the so-called second league in League One, you know, the Lincolns, the Burtons, the Bristol Rovers, the Cambridge, the Exeters. I'm not sure that we'll be as far adrift at the Barnsleys and the Derbys and the Charltons as perhaps some people perceive. So I've had some great comments, so I'm going to try and go through them now. I'm not going to put them all on screen. Morning to Jimmy Atkin. Steve Jolland says, recent results have shown where MK is taking us. Marvellous result. Great result. Very good. Yeah, very good indeed. Kate Jackson, it was my second time watching the Imps this season. Thought we were solid without being spectacular and certainly capable of a top half finish. Mandrew reminds me of Richard Butcher in his first spell. It's an interesting comparison. Somebody else likens him to a Keith Hero a bit further down, which I'll come on to in a second. Nigel, good to meet you the other week, my friend. Morning, Gary. Solid win last night, perhaps just as important. Walsh got through 90 minutes. I'd expect Jacko to come back in Saturday. I kind of agree with you. I actually, if we were going 3 at the back, I'd expect Jacko to come in on Saturday. Not sure we will, but we'll see. You know, we've got to be a little more adventurous against Port Vale if we do go 3 at the back. If we do, yes, I expect Jackson to come in. And the fact that you can rotate Jackson and Walsh should not have a detrimental effect on the rest of the defence is a great position squad-wise. Morning, Steve Barton. Morning, Rob. Scott, hope you're both well. I did reference Barnsley and Bradford. Kate says the difference between Barnsley and Bradford is that the latter are historically a lower league side that have had a few good years. Barnsley have usually been a championship level team with the occasional dip into the lower leagues. Yeah, I was thinking more kind of on supporter size, ground size, that sort of thing. I don't think there's a huge amount of difference between them. And I buy into that. You know, Bradford have probably over their history had a longer spell outside the top 2 divisions than Barnsley. Almost certainly. I think you can see that by the number of times we've played both in our lifetime. Bradford far more. Hopefully you kind of got the kind of the comparison there. Nigel says there was a good atmosphere and their crowd was poor. Chris Graham, morning Gary, really impressed with the lads' fitness this year. Worried about Paul being out of contract in the summer. I'm not. 2 reasons. One, I think we'd miss him. I think we could sell him in January for when I say a nominal fee. Somebody will want to buy a centre half and get ahead of the curve. And we got him for a nominal fee anyway. Secondly, if he does go in the summer, I think at the moment we've got the squad to cover it. Yeah, I don't have a problem with our recruitment. And I remember the summer that Paul signed, the winter window Paul signed. And people thought it was a weak window. Some did. And now you look at Regan Paul got a lot of stick, remember, in that first season, by the way, when him and Bramwell both signed, a lot of stick, and people were criticising the transfer model. Cohen Bramwell scored in the Championship last night, and Regan Paul is an absolute monster for us. So I think it just goes to show, never judge a transfer window, you know, the day after, judge it the year after or 2 years after. Yeah, Max Sanders came, I think, in that window as well, didn't he? Another one that people were critical of when we signed him and he didn't get into the team. It's interesting, really interesting, hindsight. Steve Turner, morning mate, great win, but could have put it to bed early in the second half if I was nitpicking. Yeah, we could have put it to bed, but I think the fact that we've won is positive. We are being very clinical, and if that lack of clinical edge leaves us, we would get more games like Charlton. But I always think the best place to start when building anything is at the bottom or at the back in football's respect. So make us hard to beat, and the rest will come, and we clearly are hard to beat at the moment. James Hoy, we're looking solid and clearly enjoying defending as a collective. And, you know, coming from James is always very, very honest about where we are as a team. James and I sometimes kind of chat off air, so to speak. And so I think that when you have people who are willing to be critical, but only when there's criticism needed, like James, he's not a miserable sod like Nick Oxbury has commented. Hi, Nick. When you've got people like James bringing positives to the table as well, you know that the club are moving in the right direction, because they're people that don't sit on the fence. They're not always positive. They're not always negative. They say what they see without prejudice, I would say. Rob Scott, our plan is perfect. Be the better teams. It might be a harder task trying to break those teams down who play defensively against us. 100%. Yep. David Tuplin says another clean sheet. UTMI. Andy Blackburn says bloody fantastic result last night. MK doing brilliant as far as I'm concerned. Rob Scott says, I like this. He agrees with me, so we'll put him on screen. I agree with what you say, though. I don't see a problem in going back to keeper starting again, keep the ball. Yeah, it's frustrating at times. You know what it is? There was moments where we got the ball and I thought we can have a go here, but you're outnumbered. 5 defenders, 3 attackers. You know, in that instance, you're likely to concede possession. Concede possession, you invite pressure. We don't need to invite pressure. We can sit back and have pressure come to us. We don't need to invite it when we're far up the pitch, if you see what I mean. Here he is. I guess that's the perfect away game. And yes, I enjoyed it. It's nice to know you enjoy something, Scrooge. TJ finally was excellent at last in the final third. My man of the match, more positive. Same Saturday, please. UTI. You know things have gone well when Nick's been positive. Harry Jackson, great result. Looking forward to Port Vale. I think we should get 3 points. And that's the exact sort of comment that you expect to see. These are the games that traditionally, and I'll go back a long way, by the way, on this, not just last season or the season before. These are the sorts of games where certainly pre-Cowley, certainly Keith Alexander, certainly John Schofield, these are the sorts of games that have always been tough for Lincoln. The games where you think you should win. When confidence is high, we've got to keep that momentum going. Got to keep that momentum going. Rob Scott, TJ's confidence-based. He struggled for a season, now he's starting to believe in himself again. I wonder if maybe the culture shock of being a Premier League prospect, thinking he might fight for a place in the Spurs team, to then moving to Lincoln City permanently might have been tough. TJ's a really nice lad. You chat to him, he's really softly spoken, he's down to earth, he's relatable. And I can see why he might be a confidence player. And I really hope, I think when people get behind him and when he has moments like that block and you can see him celebrating it, I think they're really positive. And I remember the playoff semi-final away at Sunderland when they were 2-0 up, you remember? And he made a block right before half time. It might even have been on the line or a clearance or something. And it was phenomenal defending. It was as good as a goal, and it put us into the playoff final. And I remember thinking, he's such a good player. He's still that player. Something as, he has struggled, not as much as people say, but he has struggled. But it's great to see him getting back on track. And Rob clearly enjoyed it. Sean Rowan's excellent, going to be even better in time. I fear that won't be with us because I think he's such a good player. People are going to take note. James Bride, TJ is one of those cases where some fans have made their mind upon him. Most of us are all guilty of it at times. Yeah, we are. 100%. My guilt is making my mind up on somebody that they're a good player and not being. Dean Cropper springs to mind. Theo Archibald, I made my mind up. And once I made my mind up on a player that I want to back, I look for the positives and nothing more. Jacob Davenport's the most recent one. James Hoy loved the TJ fist pumping after closing down an attack last night. Sums us up recently. It did. I'm having to get through a little bit here, I'm afraid. So Owen Dawson says, if we move Rowan on for a feed in January or the summer, I'd love to know what figures generated on left backs alone. James Hoy says Mandrew reminds him of Yayo. So we've got Yayo and Richard Butcher now. It reminds me facially a bit of Lewis Monsma, actually. James Bryan says, talking Scully, if we can't pay their wages, can they pay his fee? I would imagine so. I don't think there's a case where he would come back to us, to be honest. I don't think that's the case. Hang on 1 second. The dog's going to have to go on his lead. So we've got Mike Garrity. He's a big part of the early success, says Rob. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I'll put that down. I can't actually get him on his lead properly. Nigel Was says morning to you. Rob Sutton says different task versus Port Vale. Nick Oxbury's talking about food now. Martin Dalzell, morning from Cyprus. Morning, my friend. Harry Cross thought Lincoln would win. When I saw the stats midway through the first half, seems Barnsley were in total control, in some control of possession. But you've got to have possession with a purpose. MK Dons found that out a couple of years ago. Possession doesn't mean winning football. You've got to have that nice mix. Samuel Rowson, writer for the site. How you doing, mate? Unreal atmosphere from us Imps. Really got behind the lads at the end. Bring on Port Vale. Charlie, this way. John Wade. Excellent winning performance by the Imps tonight. After 14 games, we're sitting 11th. The remarkable thing is, Charlie, we have games in hand over 8 of the 10 teams above us. Not forgetting also we've conceded 1 goal, nearly 500 minutes of football. And that goal was gifted to them. Superb start to the season now. Time to start believing. Yeah, I like that. Positivity is great. After a win, to see so much positivity. Thank you. Derby 2, Ipswich 0. Charlie, this way. Ipswich 1-0, Barnsley 1-0 with draws versus the Wendy's and Charlton. Somebody pinched me up, especially with those massive East Coast Scousers are losing at Barrow, Mr. Barwise. So I'm just having a problem with the dog. This way. So there we go. Lots of positivity. Lots of reasons to be cheerful. Don't get carried away. That's what I'm going to say. Don't get carried away. November, we've only got, I think, 3 league matches. Accrington coming up, Plymouth, Morecambe. I think they're all at home as well, which is going to be a tough little spell. We've still only won 1 game at home all season, so just look at some of the caveats. We've got to be able to break these teams down. Talk of top half finishes is very premature. But what we've seen, and John, we played 9 of the top 10. I said that last night, I think, on Twitter, and only 4 of the bottom 10, by the way. What we've seen is progress. What we've seen is the fear of the summer. Inexperienced manager in terms of being the manager. He's not an inexperienced coach. He's been coaching for years and years. He's not an inexperienced person. He's been playing football at the highest level. Inexperienced in terms of a manager, a relatively new side, big loan players leaving, probably lower profile loan players coming in. Tough couple of results, not defeats at home, by the way. When you're talking about tough results being draws at home, we're still undefeated at home. That's good. And really only Peterborough and Cambridge defeats where you go, oh God, because Bolton, I thought we matched them. So there's only been 2 games where I felt we've lost and we've been kind of not out. We were outplayed against Peterborough. We weren't even outplayed against Cambridge. And when you talk about being outplayed, what does that mean? Conceding loads of shots. Technically, none of the teams that we've played this month have outplayed us either. They've had more possession and they've had efforts, but shots on goal, not all that many. Plenty of reasons to be positive. I'm going to go and do some work now, some actual work. Hope you all have a good day and bring on Saturday. Up the Imps.